It is day 20 of the federal election campaign, which means party leaders are now halfway to the finish line. 20 days remain before Canadians head to the polls. So who's got the edge and what's changed since day one? Shachi Kurl is the executive director of the Angus Reid Institute. She joins us from Toronto, and Eric Grenier is the CBC's polls analyst. He's with me here in studio. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Hey, Vashi here.
Okay, let's take stock halfway through. Shachi, I'll start with you. Where do things stand?
Well, they stand largely where they stood about 2 weeks ago at the beginning of the campaign and the writ period when the writs were drawn. This has been a campaign where none of the parties have really managed to break out with any matter of momentum. If there was momentum that was to be seen by the Liberals, and they were starting to show that heading into the campaign, of course, it's been arrested by the issues around blackface. They have survived it, but it's arrested their momentum. In the meantime, the Conservative Party continues to sort of, at the national top line level, not be able to pick up a lot of movement. But, you know, we know, Eric knows this, you know this, I know this, the real numbers come down to the places where races are really tight and have traditionally been tight. And we're going to be having data out tomorrow that shows that when you look at the 67 ridings that were decided by 5 percentage points or fewer in terms of popular vote in the last election, that is where you want to look at what is the vulnerability, what is the swing factor in ridings like that. And there we do see a tale to tell where the Conservatives are up, the Liberals are down. The NDP has not been able to capitalize on that Liberal down momentum. And I think that is really the issue that the parties themselves are focusing on as they try to figure out how to break sort of the deadness or the logjam into the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, that logjam is so interesting, Eric. And if we are sort of drilling down into certain areas like Shachi is speaking about, where would you be looking?
Well, primarily in the GTA, of course, there's nothing shocking there that a lot of those seats are going to be the ones that are going to be the closest. They were very close in the last election, and we have seen in the past there can be pretty significant swings when the electorate is swinging. We haven't seen that happening in this campaign because Conservatives, when you think about where they are nationally, they're only up about 2-3 points from where they were in the last election, a losing election. In Ontario, they are more or less holding exactly the same support that they had in the last election as well. So there's not a lot of movement there. It's about where the Liberals have dropped, which would be in a place like Ontario where they have dropped some support, but also the New Democrats. You know, Shachi, I'll be really looking forward to seeing those numbers tomorrow, but, the NDP was close in a lot of ridings in Quebec, for example. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be in play in those ridings anymore. And in those places in the regions of Quebec primarily where the NDP did win some seats, they're going to have a lot of trouble holding them this time. If you are just holding your vote and you're the Bloc, you're the Liberals, you're even the Conservatives, you're going to be winning seats that just the NDP is losing. And it's just a question of who's going to be there to pick up a lot of these seats in some cases by default.
Right. Absolutely. The NDP's pain is both the Liberals and the Blocs, actually, and the Conservatives' gain. Everybody stands to, I hate to put it this way, sort of pick over the pieces of what's left in some of these ridings where the NDP does look to be in trouble. And as we talk about almost every week, turnout is going to be a big piece of that. So, of course, the swings, when they swing, have as much to do with identified voter momentum. I'm switching my vote, but also to those who just decide to stay home versus those who decide to show up. And so in those battlegrounds, in places like Ontario, in Quebec, exhorting your base to actually show up. It's not just a matter of changing your mind. You've got to change your mind and then do something about it in order to help the party that you're looking to help.
How significant do you think the turnout's going to be, Eric?
I think it will make a big difference in this election if it remains as close as it is now, because in that case it will all come down to who will have that turnout advantage. When you've seen the polls that have been done over the last few weeks, you do get the impression that the Conservatives might have that advantage. Their voters tend to be a lot more committed to the Conservative Party. They're the ones who are decided. They're the least likely to change their mind between now and Election Day. And generally the Conservatives are doing better among older voters, which tend to vote in bigger numbers. Whether that'll make a big difference nationwide, that's hard to say because as we know, with the big numbers we're seeing from the Conservatives in places like Alberta and in Saskatchewan, they would need a pretty significant turnout bump to really overcome the Liberals' advantage in the seat count in places like Ontario and Quebec. So it will play a big role, and you can just see with the seat projections we have right now from the poll tracker that the Liberals do have that advantage over the Conservatives. So they would not only need to get a bump at the ballot box, but they would need to overcome some of these significant challenges they have in places like Ontario, where We hear Doug Ford's name every day during this campaign from the Liberals. They know it is something that is dragging the Conservatives down.
Shachi, we keep talking about when we're drilling down into those close ridings, Quebec and Ontario. Is there anywhere outside of that you're looking?
Well, absolutely. Also keep an eye on BC. There's always the,
Right.
you know, the old, here I am in Toronto talking about BC. BC.
You're normally in BC, so it's okay.
Exactly. Look, BC is going to be a battleground insofar as the Liberals were able to pick up seats in 2015 that they don't normally win. So some of the Burnabys, some of the Surreys, some of the North Shore ridings that traditionally go Conservative. The thing about British Columbia in 2015 was it was really sort of the icing or the cherry on the cake. It's really what sealed the amount of political momentum that the Trudeau campaign had in 2015. What a difference 4 years makes. And also in some ways represented some of the political capital that the Trudeau government thought it could spend down through things like the purchase of the pipeline, support for the TMX pipeline, and others. Fast forward 4 years, that political capital has also been spent on the broken promise on electoral reform. It's been spent on the SNC-Lavalin scandal. And so instead of BC being a place where, well, maybe a few votes go this way, a few votes go that way, and we can handle it, it becomes we've got to hang on to the bulk of all of these seats if we hope to have a chance. So yes, Ontario will be a deciding factor, but if it gets really, really tight, Quebec will be important. BC cannot count out its importance because if Jagmeet Singh manages to surge in British Columbia, if the Conservatives are able to take back some gimmies that they wished they had in 2015, it changes the dynamic for the Liberals, absolutely.
Let me just revisit as we look ahead, Eric, to the next 7 days, Quebec, because we've got a big debate there, TVA, the TVA French debate, which all leaders except for Elizabeth May and Maxime Bernier are participating in. Very big audience traditionally. What does the lay of the land look like in Quebec right now, and how significant could that debate be?
I'd say it's extremely significant. This is the first time we're going to see Justin Trudeau debating in this campaign because, of course, he wasn't in the Maclean's debate just at the outset. The Liberals still have a big lead in Quebec. It's not that they are more popular than they were in the last election, but it's because the second-place party is either the Conservatives or the Bloc Québécois, about 14 points back. So a wider gap than we saw in the 2015 election between the Liberals and the New Democrats. The New Democrats are below 10%. What'll be interesting about the debate, Justin Trudeau more or less just has to hold his own because he needs to retain that support that he has among Francophone Quebecers. Andrew Scheer might struggle a little bit in what is a second language. He'll be the least able to communicate his position among the four leaders. Jagmeet Singh might have a bit of an advantage because Elizabeth May won't be there, and he might be able to get some of that support that right now is parked with the Greens in Quebec, but the New Democrats would certainly like back. And then Yves-François Blanchet, the Bloc leader, this is a big opportunity for him to make the Bloc look like a relevant party once again. If you think about the last election, Gilles Duceppe was in his, 100th campaign for the party. It looked like the party that of the past, whereas with Yves-François Blanchet, much more of an environmentalist bent. He's on side with most Quebecers on the identity issue with Bill 21. He has an opportunity to show to Quebecers that the Bloc is still, it's not a fossil anymore. We'll just see if he can succeed in doing that.
Quick final word to you, Shachi. When you look ahead to the next 7 days, what are you looking at?
I'm looking also towards the debates, and people also often tend to look at the impact of debates as will there be a campaign-defining moment, but it's always also very subtle. Sometimes debates can be the moment where a ballot issue is finally framed, and I think, the one thing we haven't seen in this campaign is a single defining ballot issue, not for lack of trying on the part of the parties. I was reminded by David Hurley today that 1988 wasn't about a knockout punch in that debate, but it was about defining free trade as the ballot question, which then gave the parties a way to figure out how they could win or subsequently lose. So let's see what emerges from the coming week. Yes, TVA, and then more debates to come in terms of viewership, but also in terms of what the parties are able to do in terms of steering voters to an issue that they can then try to win on. And will it work?
Will it work? That is the question. Thank you very much, both of you. Thanks to Shachi Kurl of the Angus Reid Institute and CBC's polls analyst Eric Grenier. We'll check back in next week. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Vashi, Eric.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.